I'm here at Motorola headquarters in Chicago, and I have the brand new Motorola Edge Plus. It's got 5G, it's got 12 gigabytes of RAM, it's got Snapdragon 865 processor, it's got a 90 hertz refresh rate screen, it's got all the specs. Let's take a look. After getting to spend some time with the Edge Plus at Motorola, I'm back here at CNET. Hey, it's me again. So all the video that you've been watching was filmed in February, and a lot has changed since then. One of those things is that Motorola is now releasing two new phones. The Motorola Edge Plus, which pretty much the rest of this video is all about, and a lower priced, they haven't announced what the price is, phone called the Motorola Edge. Now think of it kind of like how Samsung has the Galaxy S20 and S20 Plus, or the OnePlus 8 or OnePlus Pro. Not exactly, it's not different sizes or anything like that, but conceptually, you get the idea. So look for me at the end of this video, and I'll walk you through a little bit more about the Motorola Edge and how it compares to the Edge Plus. Now, it's been a while since Motorola's had a truly flagship device, and the Edge Plus looks really impressive. Okay, wait, hang on. So just a couple weeks ago, I got to review the Motorola Razr, and one of the most common questions I got was, where's the specs? This thing costs $1,500, where's the specs? Well, the answer is, they're all in the Motorola Edge Plus. This thing is spec'd out, and when you realize it only costs $1,000, that's amazing, especially when you see some of the phones it will compare to. Hey, so if you're Motorola and it's 2020, and you go to design a flagship device, what do? Well, here's the recipe they shared with us. The first thing Motorola wanted was wow factor. They wanted this thing to look and be impressive, and it really is. This thing looks outstanding. It looks powerful. It looks like it can handle almost anything you throw at it. And that was just with the couple hours we got to spend with it. So next thing you need is 5G, and in 2020, we're gonna see a bunch of 5G phones, but this is not Motorola's first 5G phone. In fact, they had the Moto Z3 and the Moto Z4, which you could add a 5G mod onto, but this phone is nothing like those two. In fact, this phone was designed from the get-go with 5G in mind. You don't have to add a mod to it. It's all in a slick, beautiful package. So it's pretty exciting to be Motorola today. And the last part of this equation is you, the consumer. Motorola wanted to make sure that you were getting everything you could possibly hope for in this phone. And from the get-go, it looks like they may have accomplished that. It has really outstanding specs. It's as if Motorola went to the spec grocery store and bought all the specs and put them into their spec shopping cart, and then checked out at the spec cash register and went home and made a spec-filled phone. It's a lot of specs. It's one thing to have all the specs, but it's another to be able to, well, bring them all together in an attractive design. And well, I think the Edge Plus looks pretty magnificent. In the hand, it feels robust. It is attractively chunky. And when I say chunky, I know it's chunky because on the inside, it has a whopping 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and that makes me a very happy Patrick. But let's talk about the name of the device, Edge Plus. It refers to the fact that the edges of the screen wrap around the device. Now, this is obviously not the first phone to have an edge wrapped around screen, but it looks outstanding. What are you using those edges for? Well, you can use them to light up when you're charging your battery, when you get a notification or set an alarm. Now, if you're worried about accidentally touching the edges of the screen while you're using the phone, Motorola's built in some grip and touch suppression to make that not happen. And if the edges are too much for you, you can actually go into the settings and decide which apps use the edges and which don't. When the edges are off, they turn black, and it looks just like a normal display. In the couple hours I had with the phone, I could not see if there was like a master on-off switch for the Edge lighting. However, I did notice that there is an on-screen side button that you can tap to toggle on and off the Edge display. You can also set that side button to go back to the last app. So that's something. One place the edges are well used is in Moto's new Game Time mode, which allows you to create virtual shoulder buttons on the sides of the phone, which is great for gameplay. By the way, you can also use Game Time to move the on-screen buttons to better positions. I'm not sure exactly how useful the Edge screen will be in everyday use. Obviously, it's reminiscent of Samsung Galaxy phones and their Edge displays, but it's the gaming functionality that is really curious, because those virtual shoulder buttons on the Edge Plus pushes the phone towards gaming phones like the Asus ROG Phone 2, the Red Magic 3, and their functionality without obviously the glowing logos on the back. Speaking of gaming phones, the Edge Plus has a 6.7-inch OLED screen with a 90 Hz variable refresh rate. So that's going to be great for making animations look smoother, making your text and images look a little crisper, as well as providing a more immersive gaming experience, especially for games that have a high refresh rate built into them. So with the variable refresh rate, that means actually the phone's deciding when it's in 90 Hz per second or when it's going to 60 Hz per second and kind of switching them up depending on what's on the screen. You can override that and choose to be in 60 Hz per second all the time or 90 Hz, and that's up to you. And that's a really cool option to have. The screen ratio is 21:9, which is a trend we see across a lot of phones. The Motorola Razr, the Samsung Galaxy Z flip phone, Sony's Xperia 1 and 5. Now what's great about this, especially for movies, is you can watch them in the original aspect ratio. So you can watch something like Dark Knight and it takes up the full screen. However, I watch a lot of YouTube videos and almost all of them are in a 16:9 aspect ratio. So when I'm watching them on that phone, it's going to have giant black bars on either side. To overcome this, Motorola does give the option to zoom in on a 16:9 video. Basically pushes it on the middle of the screen to take advantage of that full screen. So that's something. The screen also houses an optical fingerprint reader. Now, when I reviewed the Moto Z4 last year, it also had an in-screen optical fingerprint reader, and it took a little time for me to warm up to it, and to be honest, to warm up to me, because it's AI based. However, in the time I had with the Moto Edge Plus, at least the demo time, it seemed to work really well and was very fast and responsive. As I mentioned before, this is a 5G phone and has built-in antennas for both sub-6 and millimeter wave technology. That being said, Motorola claims its optimizations will make it the, quote, fastest ever, quote, 5G phone. They claim speeds of up to 5 gigabits per second, which, that's pretty impressive, actually. We'll have to test those claims out, but to whet our appetite and show the prowess of how fast 5G is on this phone, Motorola brought us into a lab where there was a 5G node inside the lab. Now, they had the phone connected to it, and the Edge Plus created a local hotspot, which had a handful of laptops, I think 3 or 4 laptops. There might have been more or less, can't remember. A couple tablets and a gaming computer. And across the devices, they were streaming 19 different YouTube videos at full quality, as well as a Netflix 4K movie at full quality. And on top of it, 2 of the guys in the lab had a video chat. Now, I'm not sure exactly when or why I would need to stream 19 videos at the same time, but it was impressive. One of the other big features are the cameras, which get some cred from Motorola One's line of phones. The main camera has a 108 megapixel sensor, which combines 4 pixels together to produce a 27 megapixel image. The sensor itself is really large, especially for a phone. Motorola claims it's almost 3 times larger than a regular 12 megapixel sensor that we might see on other phones. Then there's the optical image stabilization, which is found both on the main camera, but also the 8 megapixel telephoto camera that has a 3 times optical zoom. And rounding out the cameras on the back is a 16 megapixel ultra wide angle macro camera that, when in macro mode, can get as close as 2 centimeters from your subject. The macro camera was really impressive. At one point, I had the camera basically inside a flower, past the petals, and I could not believe how much detail and sharpness there was. I am really excited to test out the Edge Plus's cameras, especially more in depth. They seem to have a lot of promise, and the handful of photos I took at the demo looked really good on the Edge's screen. So let's talk about video. The Edge Plus can shoot 6K video. The Edge Plus does have a Snapdragon 865 processor, which actually does allow for 8K video, but the reason Motorola did not include 8K is they felt the 6K better matched the sensor. Now, I really honestly respect this decision. Not having 8K video, it's absolutely fine. There's a lot of other camera and video features, but a couple that popped out to us was video portrait mode, which will blur out the background of the video and keep your subject isolated, kind of like photo portrait mode. There's also a new long exposure mode, which allows the shutter to stay open 32 seconds to capture long exposure photography. And the other one of interest is night vision, which Motorola has had on other phones, but I think optimized with all the RAM in this thing, as well as optimized with that 865 processor, it's going to be really impressive. It basically takes 8 photos and combines them together to produce a better, sharper nighttime photo. Around the front is a 25 megapixel selfie camera. It's housed inside a hole punch display, also reminiscent of a Samsung phone. All right, some other interesting features on the Edge Plus include 15-watt turbocharging, wireless charging. There's also 5-watt wireless charging sharing, so I could power up a pair of Bluetooth headphones in the back if it was conductive. There's also stereo speakers, which Motorola is claiming is the loudest ever on a phone. We'll have to test that out for ourselves, and it runs on Android 10. Motorola's timing with the launch of the Edge Plus is outstanding. At $1,000, the Edge Plus costs the same as a Galaxy S20. It has the same size screen as the S20 Plus, and it has the same honking old battery as the much more expensive Galaxy S20 Ultra. The Motorola Edge Plus comes in two colors, Thunder Gray, which was my nickname in karaoke, and Smoky Sangria, which was what people called me after I had been kicked out of my last book club. The Edge Plus will be available in the US on Verizon as an exclusive. Hi, as promised, I'm back, so let's talk about the Motorola Edge. Fundamentally, it's pretty much the same phone as the Edge Plus. For example, it has the same size screen, but the body's just slightly more svelte. It's on the inside we see the biggest differences. It does have 5G, but it's only sub-6. As opposed to having a Snapdragon 865 processor, it has a 765 processor. As opposed to having a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, it has a 4,500 milliamp hour battery. And as opposed to having a 108 megapixel camera, it has a 64 megapixel one. But the biggest difference is going to be price. Now, we know the Motorola Edge Plus is $999, and while we don't know the price of the Edge, it will likely, you can surmise, it's going to be, well, cheaper. The other big deal is the Edge Plus isn't Verizon exclusive, at least in the US, whereas the Edge won't be. It'll be unlocked. And the Edge will likely come out this summer. Hey, so that's all I got. Check out CNET.com for more coverage on the Motorola Edge Plus and Motorola Edge. But I want to hear from you guys. Which of these phones do you think you would get? Is there one that's more appealing to you? And how do you think these compare to the Galaxy S20 family? I mean, the Edge Plus is the same price as the Galaxy S20, so that's kind of curious to me. Throw your responses in the comments.